drank pots and pots and pots and pots of strong black coffee, trying to keep my sleepy soul awake. But the sleepiness still comes along, and when it does, it's fast and strong. I end up with a bad case of the shakes.
Morning and welcome to Coffee Talk. It is Sunday morning. Let's talk some tanks. I've got the dad mug with the Disney action going on. Have a sip of coffee with me. I got the French roast Starbucks French roast, which is slightly overpriced, but pretty good actually. I do like the dark roasts. What do we have on the docket for today? I won't say it'll be short today because I have failed every time I've said that. We'll go over the missions and events that we have going on. We got Tank Hollow that just started. We're going to talk a little bit about the new ranking system that's in beta. We got a Victor interview, always fun. Actually, this one's pretty tame, so that one actually should not take too long. We're going to delve into toxicity in World of Tanks. Is there or isn't there a lot of toxicity? That is a word that will get fun to say after I say it about 20 times. And then at the end, I've got an interesting thing from the U.S. Army called Operation Overmatch, which is a game they're now pushing. We'll talk about that a little bit. That is of interest to me. So we've got several things going on to talk about. You'll see that in the garage here, we are looking at my new Patriot, which I won from Tank Rewards. Interesting sidebar before we get going. I also have this tank, which is the exact same tank. I thought I might get the gold, but apparently if you have clone tanks, then you get that tank. So, because I needed two T2065s. All right, welcome to Coffee Talk. Like I said, Sunday morning, we've got our coffee. Relax a little bit and let's talk about some tanks. Starting with the events and missions that we have going on. So we've had a swap over to Tank Hollow event. We'll get to that in just a minute, but if you click on the events tab, you'll notice that Tank Academy Officers Training is still going, and you have till the 2nd of October. As I've said before, we've gone over this in detail. Pretty easy just by playing, and there's quite a few goodies in there. Nothing amazing, but some good stuff. And that's all that's on that tab. If we run over to the missions tab, you will see that we have the ranked battles thing is still going on, so you can get some goodies by playing that. The second season ongoing for Small Supply Raid, which starts on the 2nd of October and goes to the 16th. Some pretty easy things: damaging vehicles, enemy vehicles destroyed, and vehicles spotted. It looks like then you're going to get some reserves out of that. Over here, enemy vehicles destroyed. Every 25, apparently, you're going to get some small kits and small fire extinguisher. Small, really, Wargaming? Small ones. 20. All right, it's free stuff. Got it. Noted. But, wow. Small. All right, we get into Tank Rewards, which is now Tank Hollow 2. I will break into that a little bit on the website page. But you will see, I just want to let you know something that's going on right now. This Iron Seal, these tokens, which is the way they do these things now. If you look at this, the 15,000 daily, so 15,000 experience daily, gives you one token. And this is supposed to count up over here your tokens. So you can see that I am showing two. You'll also notice, though, for Halloween, exclamation point, I have done the 20,000 damage caused 3 times now, because there's 5 total, which lets you just keep doing it until you've completed all of them. They don't have to worry about the 24-hour reset, is basically what I'm saying. I've done that 3 times, so 3 plus there should be 2 of those equals 5, and that's math in public, and I think it's correct, but I'm only showing 2. I have seen a lot of people on the forums talking about this and over on support, so they should be aware of that problem, and hopefully they get that sorted out before the 4th of October, which is when the Tank Hollow points hit, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It's not even going to be a minute. So Tank Mastery is still going on. That's the standard act. We got a couple of those things. And down here, Hunt the Sheriffs. It's actually a ×3 weekend, I want to say. That is not showing up there on the bottom, which it usually does. And so we've got a ×3 weekend going on. So let's jump over to the website now. Call this thing up. And this is on the tankrewards.com. All right, so tankrewards.com, it's where you've been going to get your tank rewards. You can see that you can switch from the different reward thing going on. That was the last one, Battle of Kursk. By the way, you need to get in there. You got 26 days to get your Battle of Kursk stuff. You can see what I want. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. So we'll go back over to Tank Hollow, brings it over, and now you can see that we've got these houses. If you remember from last year, what happens is you get your points, and then they load the points, and there goes the talk. You load your points, they load your points, and then you can come in here and you can select a house and you get prizes. So houses earned, houses remaining, and bonus houses. There are some competitions and reward event kind of things, usually on the forum. So if you want to dig into that, it's under the customer service or community, I think, tab down there, the community tab, where all their contests are. So they do a lot of stuff. Some of these houses are designed by players, so that gives you some houses, other things in there. So if you want to compete in that stuff, you can get extra houses, which is cool. Let's just talk about how it works. Say I have 3 houses, I can pick boom, boom, boom. There'll be a little thing to click on, or the house will highlight however it goes, and then you'll get some kind of prize out of that. And there's lots of stuff. There's barracks, there's slots, there's premium tanks, all kinds of stuff, consumables, good stuff like that. So if you come down here, one cool thing about this year is just simply unlocking a number of points will get you a prize. So 5 points a slot, that's pretty cool. You'll get an emblem, lots of emblems. 15 points, you get 4 more emblems, because I don't know why anyone wants emblems, but they do, or Wargaming thinks we do. You'll see that 30 points, you get a 50-hour credits times 8. That's fantastic. That's probably the best one as far as I'm concerned. 40 points, you get a Dicker Max. So if you want a Dicker Max, remember if you have a Dicker Max and you get this, then you get the gold for the Dicker Max. So only 45 points to make that happen. And then at 50 points, when you get right up to 50, you get another 10. Okay. I'll talk about how this works in just as we go here. So the daily 15,000, so that's 1 per day every 24 hours, 15,000 experience, and you get 1 house. Pretty simple. And 1 point towards this stuff. Then there'll be kind of weekly extra events. Right now it's Halloween, exclamation point, 20,000 damage, and you can do that 5 times. So by the time the 4th rolls around, I should have 4, 5, plus 5, about 10 points, I want to say, 8 to 10, somewhere in there. I won't do all the math, you guys can figure that out. But that's a pretty good amount of points, and I'll be able to pick 10 houses, and I'll get 10 prizes, whatever they might be. Additionally, bonus houses, I forgot to mention, if you click right here, you can even get it as a prize from the house. So you can click on a house and get a bonus house. Now, hopefully you get a prize and the bonus house, and not just a bonus house because you just used your point. But I would not put it past Wargaming. We'll see how that works. These are the dates you can see for how long they go. This one's going to be revealed on the 5th, when this one I believe will close down. Actually, that's not quite true yet. Nope, it says 29 to 1, so this is good. So once they start, it looks like you can keep on trucking until the end of the event. So that's nice, actually. But the start of the other ones are delayed as they go. That way you get X number of houses a week, and there you have it. You can see that it's going to go for quite a long time. So it's not every week. It looks like every 4 or 5 days or something like that. Again, math in public. So that is all good stuff that they have going on. So let's jump over and see what they got for sale. Shameless plug time for Wargaming. Go to the premium shop. And what do we got? Hey, look, the 59 Patton Ultimate. So the 59 Patton is back in the shop. That's a fairly mediocre tank, to be quite honest. It is, I think, going to get a little buff when the 59 gets the buff. But it is in the shop. If you really got to have one, there you go. The CDC is out there. The WZ-120 1GFT is still in there. If we jump over to the Vehicles tab. Very quickly, yep, all the tanks I talked about. Guard is still in the shop for 22 hours. So get it while it's hot. If you got to have a guard, you might want to get on that. And that is it for the missions and for the sales. So we will move on to a discussion about the new rankings, which is pretty interesting. So your personal ranking is now going to be a WTR, New World of Tanks ranking. And the standard propaganda is, how do you assess personal efficiency in World of Tanks? A few tools would pop up for sure. Should we start a discussion? However, the personal rating, their old rating, is unlikely to make the list, paling in comparison to many third-party systems. To improve it, we worked through your feedback on various rating tools and designed an agile system. We'll talk about that in a minute. That evaluates player performance rather than the total progress on their account and responds to changes within the game. So, evaluates player performance rather than total progress on their account. So right off the bat, know that the numbers they're using start in 2014 sometime. So anything you did before that is not actually in their system. There's an argument to be made that a lot of that old data is invalid based on all the changes That's a lot of that discussion you can find over on Watt Labs. A lot of it is pretty esoteric or very detailed mathematically, which is not in my wheelhouse. So I will let most of the mathematical stuff go. We'll look at this in a broad brush idea. So they're trying to then get to player performance rather than total progress, which is interesting. Full disclosure, my win rate and rating goes down a bit with the new beta system here because not a lot of my wins, but a good chunk of my high win rate games were in the very old company battles, which I did very well in. So if we look at this, it's a WTR, World of Tanks rating. It's no longer your PR, like I said. Putting modes that are miles apart in gameplay into one basket led to questionable apples to oranges leaderboards. There were hardly any criteria to determine if a player is skillful or just plays in different modes. So it's going to be random battles only. I disagree with that. I think the old systems certainly show whether a player is skillful, because if you had a high PR, you more than likely had a high win 8 or whatever other metric that you want to look at. But that's fine, they're working on it. Vehicle specific ratings now, so calculated as individual undividable value. The rating neglected a vehicle's nuances. Now the rating is calculated for each tank separately. So you're going to have separate tank rankings as well once that tank gets enough fights. And that is actually pretty interesting because it's a leaderboard thing for tanks, for specific tanks, and that's kind of fun. When they did the top tanker event, I really wish they would have put top tanker into the game, and I think some of the background math and the things they did for top tanker are probably built into this. So you can be the number one guy in the whatever tank you want. Okay, so here are the performance parameters that they're taking into account. Some of this is kind of interesting. Cause damage. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. How much damage are you causing? Assisted damage upon spotting, stunning, and for track destruction. Now I think everyone buys that the spotting and track damage, tracking and spotting damage is important. I think the whole community agrees with this. The idea that stunning from artillery is actually on par with spotting and track destruction is something that Wargaming is pushing hard, and I don't know if there's a consensus agreement on whether damage from stunning or damage to tanks that are stunned by artillery is actually on the same level as tracked or spotting damage. I tend to say not, and that's an interesting sidebar and a whole nother discussion. But however, they are going to use that, so every player knows there's no damage without spotted enemies. Effective spotting, immobilizing, and stunning, so there they are throwing that out there, significantly contribute to victory. Completely concur on the first two. I am unsure on the third one. That doesn't mean that they're mathematically equal in their formula. That I don't know, but the way they're saying it seems to be that they are. All right, damage blocked by armor. Oh boy. Damage blocked by armor is going to give you a higher ranking. This gets a little deeper, because later on they're going to say they weight it by type of vehicle and what they think that vehicle should be doing. Ugh. All right. So damage blocked by armor. Number of destroyed enemy vehicles, I think we can all agree with that. This is an interesting sentence. Every player has faced a situation where destroying an enemy vehicle is more important than causing damage. All right, I think that can go both ways, but I think it leans heavily in removing a gun. There can be arguments for both ways, like I said. I've made those arguments, but I think it leans heavily towards removing a gun. Anyway, number of destroyed vehicles is a pretty good metric, I would say. Battles survived. The longer you play, the more damage you cause, the more enemy vehicles you spot, and if you survived a battle, you most likely won. I would agree with that. I don't know if it's that important. Now the question in my mind is this it? Is this the whole means by which you're doing the calculation, or is this just a selection? There's no real indication of that. We'll hit up another section where they describe it a little more in detail. However, so we get to this examples thing, and this is where it gets a little dicey for me. The damage blocked by armor parameter says little about the Batchat 25T and other poorly armored vehicles, but speaks volumes about the heavily protected Maus or IS-7. I don't know. Are you sure? Hence, this will rank high for the Maus, but be less important to the Batchat's combat efficiency. Okay, a couple things here. If we're talking individual tank statistics, and you want to take into account armor on that specific tank, and you don't want your numbers to mean anything across the board to the 25T, i.e. a ranking of XYZ in the MALs is not necessarily equal to a ranking in XYZ in the 25T as far as how you affect the game, I guess that's okay. And that gets into the argument of, do you break it down by individual tank and by individual tank strengths and weaknesses, or do you do an overall kind of ranking? And that is now approaching into the very specific mathematics models, which I don't know that much about. So I'm going to leave it there. I just wonder if then that number means a whole bunch, or if it's not really meant to mean a whole bunch outside of that specific tank. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm number one in the MALs, what does that really mean if a guy's number one in the bat chat? As far as the game goes, are our contributions in the game equal? I think what they're saying is not necessarily, they're just ranking within the tanks. Anyway, thoughts down below. Go ahead and hit them up. I'm sure I said something wrong in there, more than likely. Similarly, the number of destroyed opponents is definitive for vehicles with a high rate of fire and low damage, like the T-62, and far less important than damage caused for the JPZ E-100. That may be a very fundamental misunderstanding of how this game is won. I don't know. That would be interesting to take overall JPZ numbers and overall T-62 numbers. Is there actually a discrepancy between the number of kills between those two for the same given number of battles? That would be actually interesting. I don't know the answer to that. No idea. I assume maybe because they're using that as a number, or the differentiation between those numbers as a discriminating factor between those two, but that's interesting. All right. Same logic applies to other parameters or importance changes from vehicle to vehicle, while the level of influence for each vehicle depends on the average values on the server. All right, this was also interesting. Receptive to in-game changes. So the rating responds flexibly to rebalances and changes of combat strategy as it evaluates your stats against average indicators across the server. Let's say the average damage indicator drops for a vehicle across the entire server. It won't affect your ranking and rating in any way. What I don't understand is my overall rating or my rating in that tank. Are you telling me that if some stat decreases in that tank, then my rating won't change? Then how is it flexible? I think they're talking about overall rating, but then how is that flexible? Similarly, if damage blocked by armor becomes a more important parameter after an update, its influence on the rating of that vehicle increases. This way, the player assessment you receive is always on point. So I'm not really understanding the verbiage right there. Are you telling me that when things decrease, I don't get hurt, but when it increases, I get the addition to my stats? There's something is not working right there. All right. So here's the guide. Click on that link right there. And this is all on the front page right now of Wargaming's main site. And this digs down into it a little bit. It says the personal ranking will be available for a while. Here's the calculation principles, the receptive to in-game changes. Here's that example that I just talked about right there. Here's the performance parameters that they talk about. You can go through those as well. And it delves into a little bit, but nothing really new from what I talked about. The vehicle rating, they do delve into that as far as its flexibility and the statistics of it. And you can get down here to your account rating, and holy cow, if you want to do that math, that's right there. What I got in general from the account rating thing is they decreased the importance of the number of battles on your PR, now WTR, which is always a bit of a sticking point, although it had reduced influence the more battles you got. So I don't know if that was necessarily a bad thing right off the bat, but it looks like it's been taken out. And so you can dig into this. The Hall of Fame has had a change in the UI and the way it looks, and of course it's added to the vehicles, which looks a lot like the top tanker thing. So they have incorporated kind of the top tanker thing into their ranking. So there's a lot of interesting details in there and a couple questions I have, but there you have it. It's a WTR. They're doing it a little bit different. The proof will be in the pudding. Over time, we'll see how the community accepts it and whether it kind of becomes the standard or whether it is overlooked. Jump over to Watt Labs. I'm sure they're discussing it in depth over there. Probably have a lot more insight than I have. I just wanted to give you a quick broad brush overview and a couple of my questions right off the bat. That takes care of the rankings thing. Let's see what old Victor had to say. Yeah, so be gentle with me on that last segment. There's a 100% certainty that I got something wrong on that. When it gets into the mathematical pieces of it, that is not really my wheelhouse, as I said. So that being said, if you have clarifications or individual or other thoughts, definitely put them down there because I'm more than interested in hearing what the actual truth is, provided you have it. All right, old Victor, man. So this is nice. This is on Rita's blog, status report, and hopefully it's verbatim. I assume it is, but I don't know because I don't have the original document clearly. The good news here is it's got the questions and the answers, which I've mentioned several times before. It'd be nice to have the actual questions. That would help you in context. So here we're asking about new tech trees and where's the game going to go when you run out of content. And what he essentially says is, hey, look, we've dug up Polish, Italian, Hungarian tanks. Even by modest estimates, that is enough material for several years. Based on the speed at which they move, yep. So if they simply worked on those three kind of lines, it would be a couple of years, and who knows where World of Tanks is in a couple of years. Do you plan to add modern tanks? This is ever the question with them. And he said that we're often asked this. Huge walking robots, helicopters, modern tanks, missiles, lasers, all that kind of stuff. He says basically they've looked into it. For example, not everything we first tried with Grand Battles worked. Essentially what he says in here is, we've looked into it, and if it's something that looks like a good idea, we'll do it. But right now, not really. He says this quite a bit. That's the law of show business. Hits aren't easy. And that's an interesting kind of defensive crouch that he's in multiple of these questions. He actually mentions that, which is true. So there you go. Single player campaigns have appeared on consoles. Sidebar, in case you're not noticing or tracking this, the console is definitely diverging from the main World of Tanks idea in that they're getting things like Warhammer tanks. They've got the enemy tanks over there, so it is definitely more of the Wild West as far as sticking to historical accuracy. Don't go crazy. I know it's not really a historically accurate game. I got it. But we are on the PC holding on to that closer than they are. Let's put it that way. It's a matter of degrees, right? So he says, we'll see how it goes. Initially, World of Tanks is a PvP game, and that's why it's fantastic, right? That's why it's fantastic. I don't know if a PvE kind of game with a campaign would actually be that interesting. I know some people want it, and that's some people's thing, but the reason this is the hit that it is, again, relative, is because it's a PvP game. That's why it's so awesome. You're shooting other actual thinking, breathing human beings. I know at least 10 of them out there are actually human beings. They're asking about ranked battles, which was heavily criticized. Do you consider that criticism justified? So defensive crouch time, ranked battles, there's some people say skill-based matchmaking. Who's saying that? They are. Is the subject long discussed in World of Tanks? Yes, skill-based matchmaking is long discussed. Making it a separate mode as a ranked battle, which is also supposed to be end-tier content, which is what you started out calling it, is not necessarily being discussed. It was a first attempt, fair enough, got it, you just started. And the statistics say that over 90% of our active players tried the mode. Okay, and then what did they do? Did they like it? Are they sticking around? Do you have any data other than 90% of the people clicked it once? Okay, yes, a number of defects were picked up, and this is normal for any large-scale model, obviously. I listened to the players and took their feedback into account for the second season. Yes, I would say that they did that to some extent, and then put it through their own filter. But there you go, and we're in the second season. If people write or criticize, it means they're interested. Yeah, okay. But that doesn't say anything about whether what you're doing is working or not. Yes, they're interested. We're all interested. If nothing is criticized, it's suspicious. Well, if nothing's criticized, you're probably out of business. What should be suspicious is if they're mad about what you're doing. Anyway, good old Victor. That's awesome. Pretty straightforward, man. I mean, I'm not really scoffing. Okay, I'm scoffing him a little bit. But straightforward answer. Good on him. Are you playing a lot now? He plays tanks and ships and platoons with his son. That's cool. Recently revealed that Blitz will have tanks from Warhammer. Ugh. I'll just skip over that. No, thank you. Recently Now, if they made a different game, of course they can't really support 2 games, but if I'm pie in the sky guy, then I'd say, hey, take all that crap and make yourself a different fantasy tank game. So many possibilities. Another sidebar. What I'd love to see these guys do is take the idea of World of Tanks and turn it into like a no-kidding mech game with the same speed, not that mech online crap where it's like bunny hopping and raging around at light speed. Big, plotting, everything is like a super heavy moving. Anyway, complete sidebar. Then they talk about their Total War Arena start, so they're working on that. I've seen a couple videos of that. I'm going to be honest, it doesn't look very interesting. But there you go. They're working on something called Caliber, which he has no information on. And then he says Wargaming Labs Project, which is actually just a section of Wargaming. We're working on Master of Orion. Actually, they released it. I'm not sure how that one went down. I loved the first one, but that was a long, long time ago. I haven't touched this one. Anybody touched it? Let me know down in the comments. That would be interesting to know if it's worth playing at all. And he says, hey, Wargaming Labs, not Watt Labs, sorry. Wargaming Labs isn't a separate company, and he has nothing to report about what they're doing right now, if anything. This company really just kind of exploded and then started branching out in all directions, and I would assess that at the moment there's a slight retraction of what they're doing. They're still cruising along and making a lot of money, but it seems like they overreached a little bit, like most companies that expand very quickly do, and now they're attempting to find that good middle ground with a lot of their things. So that's a victor. Nothing really big, actually, right there for World of Tanks. So we'll move on to the next. So what do you think? Is the wargaming community toxic or not? I'm going to tell you that I don't really find it that toxic. Yes, there are toxic individuals, but in general, even on the standard forum or even over at Watt Labs or the other forums or on Rita's blog, yeah, there's some trolls that get in there and go crazy. Over on Armor Patrol, same thing happens. But overall, I don't really find it to be that toxic. I find it to be funny more than anything. And I'll get on a sidebar on that in a second, because a lot of the toxicity has to do with how you take it. This one made me laugh. I posted this and said, hey, here's what I won. And this guy comes in and says, how you get that and don't tell me by luck. I call it hacks, that's it. So apparently I hacked the Watt rewards, tankrewards.com, and I hacked myself a Patreon. Now, he could have been kidding. I don't know. Sarcasm is oftentimes hard to figure out, and that's one of the problems with the whole toxicity thing. Are they really being toxic? Are they just being sarcastic? Or are they just being a light-hearted troll, not really a meanie? Again, it goes back to how you take it. Well, here's another example right here. So if we call this up. So, looking right here, this is a battle I had in my 140. I did 3,500, had 6 kills. It's an okay battle. I mean, it's a pretty good battle, but it's not the most amazing battle ever. And I got 2 PMs right after this battle. Now, I'm not saying this happens a lot. In fact, it doesn't happen a whole bunch at all. Maybe every 3 or 4 sessions I'll have somebody do something like this. This particular battle, for some reason, I got 2 guys in the same battle. They weren't even platooned as far as I could tell. It was this dude in the 49L, and then we got this guy over here. Actually, they were platoons. Sorry, I forgot about that. From the same clan. So, you a cheating piece of S. And of course, here's my thing with as far as toxicity and getting a PM. If you PM me after the game, say whatever you want in the game. I don't really care. In fact, I often join in. I try not to initiate, but in the game, I will respond. If you PM me in the garage, you're going to get both barrels. Now, I didn't go on and these guys, but I did say, how did I cheat? And then, because he's got 57 at the end of his name, I'm thinking, is that his age? Was he born in 57? I said, by the way, is 57 the year you were born? No response. So I never got a response from him. And his buddy comes in and says, effing cheating. I won't even say that word. I'm like, wow, top rope, brother. What's up? And I write, how did I cheat? So I never got an answer to how did I cheat, which I didn't expect I would. Which gets me to the end of it, of toxicity, as far as this is a lot how you react to it, whether it's toxic or not. When people get onto the forums and they go crazy about how, oh my gosh, everything is so toxic and people are being mean to me, I often ask myself, well, why are you letting them irritate you? Just laugh it off or ignore it. It's not even something that you have to worry about. Dennis Miller is a comedian, older comedian. For quite a long time, he was a very liberal kind of guy. But he always had a libertarian kind of streak. I could always tell in his comedy that it was there. And he's turned a bit libertarian, or quite a bit libertarian. But anyway, he had a bit about how you handle yourself and your power. So what he essentially said is each human only has so much power. Some of us have more power, some of us have less. Sometimes it's economic power, sometimes it's connections and people we know, positional power, government power if we're in a position of authority. Maybe it's a combination of several of those or all of those. But the question then becomes, what do you do with your power? Who do you give it to? Who do you support? Your little bit of power. And once you conglomerate enough individuals' power into one spot, whether it's money, political basis, things like that, then you can affect things around you. But his question then was to the individual was, why do you give up your power so easily to a-holes? And when you give attention to these guys who are trying to be toxic, who are trying to get a reaction out of you, you're handing them that little bit of power that you own. Why do you give up your little bit of power so easily? And that's my question for these guys. And that's kind of I guess a sort of deep way to do it, or talk about it. But come on, man. If a guy is trolling you, either join in and have fun, give him as good as you get, or just ignore him. Keep your power to yourself and give it to somebody who freaking deserves it, man. So toxicity and what? That's whatever. I'm all going all philosophical and blah blah blah. But as far as toxicity and what, it just really isn't even there, man. It's an internet pixel tanks game. If you can't have a little fun giving somebody heck because you blew them up, or laugh because they blew you up, why are you even here, man? Go find something else to do. All right, so check this out. This is really interesting. This is an initiative by the U.S. Army, and it's called Operation Overmatch. There's a video involved. You can take a look at it. I'm not going to make you watch it, but you can see that it's more of a futuristic look. When you look at the video, it looks very much like World of Tanks or War Thunder. Essentially what they are doing here, if you read it, Operation Overmatch is an online multiplayer game designed to improve combat effectiveness and shape the future force through soldier feedback and human behavior data analysis. I do not see in here anywhere that it requires you to be an actual soldier to play this. And this is really interesting because what the Army here is doing most likely here is grabbing data off of this game that they're then going to use in design and tactics and such. This is going to be a very macro thing, so you're not going to jump in there and show them the newest way to use a tank, but you are going to be a data point while you're playing this, looking at heat maps, looking at how the tanks perform. I mean, the data can go on and on from something like this. And this is really the time that gaming technology is starting to get good enough that they are able to do these kinds of initiatives where they'll put a game out and they'll gather actual data that's actually usable in the real world, and they'll parse through that and figure out how to go. When you look at the video for the example, it shows all kinds of different experimental looking kinds of tanks. So they can look at weapon systems, they can look at armor layouts, they can look at design, they can even get down to things like engine reliability if they model all that stuff, just whatever they model in there. And you're just the guinea pig guy, right? I mean, you're playing a game, and in the background, they're gathering all this information in the background. So gaming technology has got to this level. I'm actually involved in some of, not this one in particular, but in some of these kind of initiatives. The idea being that you can use gaming technology to increase conceptual and procedural capability. There's a kid, and I don't know if he's still driving or not, but back in 2014, Gran Turismo 6, he was playing this game, and his name is might be Jan Mardenborough. It's this dude right here. And he basically got into racing by learning how to race on GTA 6. Now, did he learn how to physically manipulate a car other than maybe the wheel and the shifting idea? No. There's G-forces, there's noise, there's smell, there's the fear of actual hauling ass around the track. What he did learn through GTA was the tracks, the entry points, the lines, the feel of it. And how did he do it? By repetition, over and over and over. And he won this competition, and he was brought in to be a race car driver and actually raced cars. Whether he's still doing it right now or not, drop it in the comments. I didn't actually dig into it, but he did get to the point of being able to race cars because he learned a lot about it in the simulator. One of the interesting things that one of his coaches one of his actual race coaches said is the guy didn't have a lot of bad habits. So he didn't come up through kart and through all the other lower echelons of racing like the vast majority of race car drivers do. And the coaches didn't have as many bad habits to try to break. But conceptually and procedurally on the tracks, he had a great knowledge of all that information, which is something you need to learn through repetition and experience. And he could get it on a console or on a PC over and over again without the cost of the gas and the danger and the vehicle and the maintenance and everything else. It's all simulated. So a lot of that has to do with how good the simulation is. A lot of other things involved right there. We do the same thing when we were training pilots as far as putting them through the simulators, but the gaming technology is bringing it up to the point where it doesn't require this massive systemic system to get this simulated training. It's actually a bloody console, relatively cheap, with a game that somebody just made very accurate, and it becomes useful then to training people. So I thought I'd throw that out there. Pretty interesting. There's the Operation Overmatch thing right there. Take a look at it. There's a beta access button. I didn't go through this, so I'm not certain. I'm pretty sure you don't have to prove you're any kind of U.S. soldier. You can just end up playing the game. Take a look at it. All right, guys. That is it for Coffee Talk for this week. I'm just about out of coffee. Talked about quite a bit of stuff. We talked about missions and events. Got into the new rankings a little bit. Dangerous territory for me. We talked about Victor. Little quick talk about toxicity in World of Tanks, which frankly is not an issue as far as I'm concerned. And if it is, it's your problem. And then last we get into Operation Overmatch. All right, y'all. Take care. Appreciate you tuning in to Coffee Talk. Appreciate your support of the channel. I will say at the end of this, if you've got any replays of the week, or you want me to do some replay analysis, or you just have a funny video or a really good game or a really bad game that illustrates something I talk about, go ahead and send it to me. Give me a little note of what it is that you want done as far as all that goes, and I will see what I can do to get it on there and feature you on the channel. All right, appreciate it. I'm out.